Hi girly pops, it's Zoe London from proverbs, and welcome back to our Bible study. So we're on the book of Proverbs and we're starting chapter 3. Let's dive in. So we're just going to start with the first 2 verses and we're going to talk about them. So verse 1 of chapter 3, "My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee." And it doesn't sound like much, but I thought about it and I thought that what would be really important to talk about today is learning how to think long term, because that's one of the most important parts of wisdom and what wisdom does for you. So wisdom is important to have for like the rest of your life. And that's because of the fact that most people are not incredible at thinking long term, like, years in the future. Sorry, I have like one hair that I hate. Okay, yeah. Most people are not amazing, myself included, at, just thinking long term inherently. And it's something that has to be intentionally incorporated into the choices that you make and into planning your goals, your hopes, and your dreams. But also it's something that can be practiced in terms of recognizing the long-term impacts and ramifications of short-term choices, right? So wisdom helps you think beyond emotionally, right? And again, like humans, we're inherently emotional creatures. We are animals. Again, I'm a Christian, but I'm also in chemical engineering. I fully believe in evolution. I fully believe in science. I believe that both coexist. So I'm very aware of the fact that we are bipedal primates that are designed to thrive in a grassy plains environment, right? We have very overactive linguistic systems in our brain, because we're exceptionally good at language, and we have very, very big prefrontal cortexes in our noggins because our species experienced encephalization, which is our brains got bigger. I don't know, was this like 1 million years ago? This was like less than 1 million years ago, and it was coincidentally at the same time that we discovered how to cook our food. So while our digestive tracts shrunk in size because we no longer needed to have so much going on down there to digest our food, and all of a sudden we had so much more energy, what did we do with that? That all went to our brains. But we are animals, right? And because we're animals, for example, my pet bunnies, Reggie and Bambi, they are obviously domestically bred rabbits, and Reggie is a Holland Lop, and Bambers is a Blue Otter Netherland Dwarf. They're very fancy. But I think rabbits were only bred in a domestic way. That's only been like in the last 250 years. So they still, even though they look a bit different and they both have actual rabbit dwarfism, which is why they look the way that they do, the little nuggy chuggies, otherwise they're still the exact same as wild rabbits. So when you get rabbits as a pet, they are a full-on commitment, just like a cat or a dog. You should never have a rabbit in a cage. But domestic rabbits have a lifespan of 8 to 10 years. Rabbits in the wild have a lifespan of like 6 months to maybe 2 years if they're really lucky, because they're a prey species, right? And so because of that, Bambi and Reggie don't have an amazing ability to critically think. Rabbits are very dumb. I thought that they were going to be as smart as cats and dogs. I was reading on the rabbit Reddit that they were as smart as cats and dogs, blah, blah. And then when it took Reggie like almost 3 to 4 months to figure out how to jump on my bed with Bambi next to him, doing it every day, when I was like, kind of thought this was what you were evolved to do. I was like, I don't know if you're that smart. And I literally looked up what a rabbit brain looks like. A cat brain and a dog brain, they look like little human brains where they're super duper wrinkly, they have all these folds, there's a lot going on. And then a rabbit brain, there's like one wrinkle, and otherwise it is entirely smooth. They're not very bright creatures, but they're still very lovable, and they have very big personalities, and I love them dearly. But humans, again, we also, I have very long legs. I'm not gonna cross my legs. I wanted to cross my legs, but I'm not gonna do that. We are obviously in that stage of our evolution as a species where we are, you know, consciously evolving. We got fire down, then we got agriculture, as well as some tools and stuff like that. Then we did clothing, and then, you know what I mean? And then, you know, but like in the wild, humans, it wouldn't be like common for humans to live to be like 80 years old, right? Because there's a lot of stuff like a toothache would be fatal, or, you know, you get eaten by a predator. 1 in 3 women died in childbirth before the invention of modern medicine. Childbirth is extremely dangerous. And then obviously infant deaths as well. Yeah, childbirth in and of itself is extremely dangerous, and that is why it is so hard on the female body. Actually, I'll talk about this in a different video in a bit, but one of the things that I learned, and one of the experiences that I had when I did my egg donation, so I have, I technically have a son because I did an open donation as a queer person to a gay couple in Ireland. So Leo, my son, he knows, he's seen pictures of me, he knows who I am. I've met Tom and Alan, yep. But even when I dealt with the IVF stuff, I was just like, one of the things that this taught me is that I never want to be pregnant. I never want to be pregnant. I was like, 2 weeks of this is more than enough. In Canada, you can't sell surrogacy, you can't sell your eggs either. So like, surrogates in Canada, it's very high standards. You know, you've had to have been pregnant before. There's a lot of protocols in place to make sure that there's no human trafficking or exploiting of vulnerable individuals, which is part of that choice. But yeah, no, pregnancy and birthing is so dangerous. That is why it requires so much medical monitoring and assistance and everything. Again, toothache, fatal. Broken bone, fatal. Starvation, fatal. Before agriculture, and I mean, still in a lot of the world, starvation is one of the #1 causes of death. That's why I want to go into green agriculture. So we're not wired to just by nature imagine ourselves living to age 100 in these very complex societies where so many of the aspects of our conventions and aspects of our communities and how we work, and the fact that money is what it is versus, you know, hunting and foraging and stuff. And, you know, obviously, I mean, I'm Canadian, so I think any American would think that I'm a socialist. I'm not a communist. Money was not created to separate the worker from the fruits of his labor. It was created so that way farmers in Mesopotamia could have things other than like only wheat. But I'm still a socialist. I digress. So we're not great at thinking non-emotionally, non-reactively, because also in the wild there's a lot of danger, there's a lot of threats. You have to make a lot of quick decisions when, you know, I don't know, if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, you don't really have time to tax plan, you know what I mean? So wisdom is so important because it's a really big part of conscious evolution, which is what I feel that we are at as a species. And that is, as a Christian, my interpretation of the Bible in terms of how we were made in God's image. It's more so that, you know, God created everything. I like to think of God as God is everything, but in terms of God being God, it's almost like, I almost like to think that we're like a science project a little bit, but like a really good natured one, right? Or like growing a universe to see what'll happen and do your absolute best to make sure that it's awesome. Like tending a garden, right? Where everything obviously is for the well-being of the garden, and sometimes things go wrong and you have to prune things and everything, not in terms of genocide. I mean, like, you know, just, I don't know, maybe like the dinosaurs and stuff like that. Not everything is gonna work out perfectly, but you really want the best for everybody in it. There should never ever, humans should never do that. I think one of the most messed up things about genocide in general is the human belief that we have the right to play God, right? So, and again, I think that's also where the concept of playing God versus not playing God. I believe in science. I don't think science is playing God. I think it's evolving our species in the country. Not the country, the world, the whole world. But anyway, so wisdom and us being made in God's image is more so that we've evolved enough as a species that we're at that point where we can start being caretakers of our world. That's how I feel my interpretation of we were made in God's image is. I definitely feel that the concept of the Garden of Eden has to do with, you know, a bit of a metaphor for making the choice to consciously evolve, right? And again, I think Eve eating the apple in the Garden of Eden, I don't so much think, like, yeah, I guess the snake tricked her or whatever, but when you think about the context of, in Christianity, how, you know, God always wins because no matter what Satan's doing, God is aware, right? And then also God and Satan, again, I think it's good cop, bad cop, where God is like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to be good, and Satan's going to be like, I'm going to make sure that you learn the lessons, right? Yeah, I think that has to do more so as a metaphor from evolving into a self-aware species.